Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Jimmy Talks. Today, we're diving into a serious and complex topic. I believe these wars were a monumental misstep, and I'm going to explain why, and I'm going to break it down step by step. We'll cover the official reasons for these wars, troubling questions surrounding the events of September 11, 2001 that sparked them, potential ulterior motives like personal vendettas and benefits to our greatest ally, like Israel, and why these conflicts fail to deliver any meaningful benefits to the American public. So let's begin with the official reasons for the wars. On September 11, 2001, the United States was attacked by 19 hijackers, most from Saudi Arabia, carried out a coordinated assault using commercial airplanes, crashing them into the World Trade Center in New York City, the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., and a field in Pennsylvania after passengers fought back on the flight. It was Flight 93. Nearly 3,000 people died, and it was a national tragedy that shook the country to its core. We already kind of know this stuff, but I want to start off with that intro anyways. The U.S. government quickly pointed the finger at al-Qaeda, a terrorist group led by Osama bin Laden, who was based in Afghanistan under the protection of the Taliban regime. The response was swift. In October 2001, the U.S. launched Operation Enduring Freedom, invading Afghanistan to dismantle al-Qaeda and remove the Taliban from power. The goal was to prevent further attacks and bring bin Laden to justice. Then came Iraq. In 2003, the Bush administration argued that Saddam Hussein's regime posed a threat to global security. They claimed Iraq possessed weapons of mass destruction, which were chemical, biological, and possibly nuclear weapons, and had ties to al-Qaeda. The fear was that Saddam could supply terrorists with these weapons, leading to another 9/11-style attack. In March 2003, the U.S. invaded Iraq, launching Operation Iraqi Freedom to topple Saddam's government and eliminate the supposed threat. That's the official story. It sounds straightforward. America was attacked, so we went after the bad guys and their supporters to keep the country safe. But when you dig deeper, things start to get muddy. Let's talk about some of the questions surrounding 9/11 itself that make you wonder if we were told the whole truth. So, I'm not here to push conspiracy theories for clicks, but there are aspects of 9/11 that don't add up, and they fuel skepticism about the official narrative. Let's look at three specific points here. Was 9/11 an inside job? The inside job theory suggests that elements within the U.S. government or other powerful groups either allowed or orchestrated the 9/11 attacks to justify wars and expand control. First, there's the collapse of the World Trade Center building, both of them. This 47-story skyscraper wasn't hit by a plane, but fell symmetrically into its own footprint at 5:20 p.m. on September 11. The official report from the National Institute of Standards and Technology says it collapsed due to the fire caused by debris from the Twin Towers, but engineers and architects, thousands of them actually, through groups like the Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, argue that fires alone couldn't cause a steel-framed building to collapse like that. They point to controlled demolitions, which require explosives placed in advance, as a more likely explanation. If that's true, it raises the questions. Who had the access and the motive to set it up? And then there's the Pentagon. A Boeing 757, American Airlines Flight 77, allegedly hit it, but the damage, which was a 75-foot hole in the outer wall, seems small for a plane with a 125-foot wingspan. Photos show minimal debris, and some question whether a plane could have vaporized on impact. Kinda crazy. The lack of clear video footage, despite the Pentagon being one of the most surveyed buildings in the world, adds to the skepticism. Finally, the speed of the investigation is suspicious. Within hours, the FBI named the 19 hijackers, complete with photos and backgrounds. How did they piece that together so fast? It's not impossible, but it usually feels... it's unusually convenient. Let me put it that way, especially when other parts of the investigation took years. And now I'm going to go on to our greatest ally dancing when this happened. Another strange detail here is the story of the dancing Israelis. On September 11th, witnesses in New Jersey reported seeing a group of men who were later identified as Israeli nationals filming the burning towers from a company moving van's parking lot. They were reportedly celebrating, high-fiving, and taking photos, which seemed odd given the tragedy unfolding. The FBI detained them for 71 days, suspecting possible foreknowledge of the attacks. Background checks of the company called Urban Moving Systems came up as a fake company. Inside of the van that was pulled over with the 5 Israelis who were dancing as a national tragedy happened was $4,700 in cash, box cutter knives, and foreign passports. It's not a myth. It's all in somewhat redacted, declassified FBI documents. The Israeli government went on to contradict the FBI in admitting that they were there on an official intelligence mission. Bomb residue was also found in their van. So, yeah, that's kind of weird. Page 37 of the FBI reports mentions one of the Israelis told an actual worker of the moving company, "Give us 20 years. We'll have taken over your media and destroyed your country." That's an odd thing to say to somebody, right? The moving company was a front by an Israeli citizen who conveniently fled the country a few weeks after the FBI seized the abnormal number of computers at the office. Another Israeli-owned moving company was involved in the investigation where 4 Israelis were detained, and it was believed that one of the vans was used by the hijackers. Back to the original moving company van, though, it turned out 2 of the 5 men detained were agents of the Israeli government, specifically the intelligence wing called Mossad. The men claimed they were just documenting the event, but their behavior and the fact that they worked for a moving company that abruptly closed after their arrest raised a lot of speculation, and understandably so, right guys? The official explanation is that they were not involved in the attacks. After 70 days of interrogation and detainment, they were deported back to Israel with no questions asked and no charges. The incident has fueled speculation about foreign intelligence agencies knowing more than they let on. Why were they so jubilant? Did they know something that the public did not? It's not proof of a conspiracy, but it's a piece of the puzzle that doesn't fit neatly. So, now I'm going to go on to something else. The passports in the rubble. Perhaps the most baffling detail, besides that, is the discovery of hijacker passports at the crash sites. A passport belonging to Satam al-Suqami, one of the Flight 11 hijackers, was found intact near the World Trade Center, despite the plane exploding into a fireball that he was on, and the towers collapsing into dust and steel. Another passport belonging to Ziad Jarrah of Flight 93 was recovered from the Pennsylvania crash site, where the plane was obliterated. So think about that. These planes crashed at hundreds of miles per hour, causing massive explosions and fires that were hot enough to melt steel, supposedly. Yet paper passports survived, unscathed, and were conveniently found. It's not impossible. I mean, stranger things have happened, but it stretches credibility, and people argue it feels like evidence planted to point investigators towards the hijackers, tying the attacks to Al-Qaeda. These questions, like Building 7, the Pentagon, the passports, the dancing Israelis, they don't prove 9/11. Themselves don't prove that 9/11 was an inside job. Hear me out. But enough circumstantial evidence, which is different, circumstantial, you have enough evidence in a circumstance to point to a logical conclusion. That's what circumstantial evidence is. Enough of that has been gathered to formulate a solid conclusion here. The government's narrative has gaps, and when you combine that with what happened next, like the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, it's hard not to wonder if 9/11 was used as a pretext for larger agendas. This leads me on to my next section. So the wars themselves, what were they really about? Let's move on to the wars themselves. Afghanistan and Iraq dragged on for 2 decades, 20 years, cost trillions of dollars, and left thousands of Americans and countless locals dead or wounded. But what did we achieve? And what drove those conflicts beyond the official narrative? The stated goal in Afghanistan was to destroy Al-Qaeda as well as the Taliban. Initially, it looked like a success. The Taliban was toppled within weeks, and Al-Qaeda was disrupted. But bin Laden wasn't caught until 2011, and in Pakistan nonetheless, not Afghanistan. So why did we stay for another decade after we killed him in 2011? We didn't get out till 2021. The mission crept from counterterrorism to nation building. The U.S. tried to install a democratic government, rebuild infrastructure, and train Afghan forces, but corruption was rampant. A lot of Afghan officials stole the aid that we sent them, and the government never gained legitimacy as no one really recognized it and knew it was backed by the U.S. government and not installed by locals or natives of the area. So the Taliban regrouped by time we pulled out, and in 2021, when the U.S. withdrew, they retook the whole entire country in a matter of days. Billions of dollars in equipment was left behind, such as tanks, planes, and weapons, now in Taliban hands. And what did this cost? Over 2,400 American service members died, and more than 20,000 were wounded. The financial cost is estimated at $2 trillion. And for what? Afghanistan is back under Taliban control, and terrorism threats still persist globally. The American public didn't get safer, we just lost lives, money, and time. Some argue the war wasn't about terrorism at all. Afghanistan's strategic location, with it bordering Iran, China, and Central Asia, made it valuable for geopolitical control. Others point to the opium trade, which exploded under U.S. occupation, as a possible motive for shadowy interest. Whatever the reason, the average American saw zero benefit from this. Let's move on to Iraq. Iraq is arguably worst in its failure. Worse, I meant, not worst. The justification, which was hidden weapons of mass destruction and the country's ties to the terrorist group Al-Qaeda, fell apart once investigated and put under scrutiny. No weapons of mass destruction were found despite extensive searches. The 9/11 Commission report later confirmed no operational link between Saddam Hussein, the leader of Iraq, and Al-Qaeda. The Bush administration's case was based on faulty intelligence, exaggerated claims, and some say outright deception. The invasion toppled Saddam quickly, but the aftermath was chaos. The U.S. dismantled Iraq's army and government, leading to a power vacuum. Sectarian violence erupted, and insurgencies, with some tied to Al-Qaeda, which wasn't a major player in Iraq before the war, grew. The Islamic State, or ISIS, later emerged from the mess, spreading terror globally. The human toll was absolutely staggering. Over 4,400 U.S. troops were killed, 32,000 were wounded, and estimates of Iraqi civilian deaths range from 100,000 to over 1 million, depending on the source. The financial cost was at least $3 trillion, with long-term expenses like veteran care pushing it higher. This leads me on to my next part, Bush's personal vendetta. Beyond politics, there's evidence that the Iraq War was personal for President George W. Bush. In 1993, Iraqi intelligence allegedly plotted to assassinate his father, former President George H.W. Bush, during a visit to Kuwait. The Clinton administration retaliated with airstrikes, but the incident left a mark. Reports from Bush's inner circle, including comments by former Treasury Secretary Paul O'Neill, suggest that he was fixated on Saddam from day one of his presidency, well before 9/11. Bush reportedly saw Saddam's regime as a family enemy, and toppling him was a way to settle the score. This personal motive, while not the sole driver, adds a troubling layer to the decision to invade, suggesting the war was partly about ego, not just security. And you know what? I understand. If someone tried to kill my dad, I'd probably try to kill them. But you know what? You're the president of a country, and you can't put other people's lives at risk for a personal vendetta. Tell Saddam, hey, let's put on some boxing gloves and let's settle it like men. But instead, we have a bunch of dead people that aren't related to you at all. Anyways, this leads me on to my next section. Who really benefited? Israel? While the American public gained nothing, Israel, often called America's best ally, saw significant benefits. The U.S. sends Israel billions in aid annually, yet the alliance's value to everyday Americans is questionable. Meanwhile, the wars served Israel's interest. Removing Saddam Hussein neutralized a key adversary who had attacked Israel in 1991 and funded Palestinian groups. Iraq's collapse left it too weak to threaten Israel. In Afghanistan, U.S. presence pressured Iran, which is Israel's primary rival, by encircling it with American forces. The war's chaos also distracted Israel's foes, reducing focus on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which we now have today, as of 2025, when this video is being recorded. Israel reaped these gains without sacrificing lives or funds, while Americans bore the $4 trillion cost. This imbalance raises questions about whose priorities shaped U.S. policy. So, what did these wars do for everyday Americans? Let's break it down. The combined cost of Afghanistan and Iraq, which was $4 to $6 trillion, could have transformed the U.S. Imagine that money invested in healthcare, infrastructure, or education. Instead, it went to wars that left us with nothing tangible. The national debt ballooned, and taxpayers are still footing the bill through interest payments. Veterans, many struggling with physical and mental scars, still bear the remnants of this. Did the wars make us safer? No. Terrorism didn't stop, it just evolved. Al-Qaeda franchises and ISIS spread to Syria, Yemen, and beyond. The wars radicalized new generations and blowback, with attacks inspired by U.S. actions becoming a reality. Meanwhile, domestic security measures like the Patriot Act eroded civil liberties, with mass surveillance and airport screenings becoming the new normal. Americans traded freedom for a false sense of safety. The wars damaged America's reputation, invading Iraq on false pretenses. It alienated our allies, and it fueled anti-Americanism. The U.S. was seen as an aggressor, not a liberator. This hurt diplomatic efforts and made it harder to address global challenges. And lastly, we have the loss of life and limb, both American and foreign. This can't be overstated. Families were shattered. Communities were completely torn apart. Veterans face high rates of PTSD. The public bore the emotional and social costs with no victory to show for it. In short, the wars enriched a few: contractors, defense companies, oil companies, geopolitical strategists, while leaving the average American, poorer, less safe, and less free. Israel gained strategically, and personal motives like Bush's vendetta played a role, but for the U.S. public, the benefits are nowhere to be found. If 9/11 was exploited to justify these wars, as the unanswered questions suggest, it's a betrayal of the public's trust. So why did we go to war in Iraq and Afghanistan? The official reasons: terrorism, weapons of mass destruction, they don't hold up under scrutiny. The 9/11 attacks, with their lingering mysteries, were used to launch a forever war, driven by personal grudges, elite interests, and allies' agendas, not the public's. Whether you believe 9/11 was an inside job or just mishandled, the outcome is the same: 2 decades of conflict with nothing to show for it. What can we do about this? As American citizens, first, you must demand transparency. Push for declassified documents about 9/11 and the war's planning. Second, you need to hold people accountable. Politicians and corporations profited while soldiers and civilians paid the price. Third, learn from history. Blind patriotism led us into these wars, and I'm a huge patriot myself. But we need to critically think. Critically thinking can keep us out of the next one. I wanted to make this video because I am a loyal and loving patriot. 3 things matter most to me, and that is family, God, and country. I know this might sound corny, but it's serious. I love this amazing country and our Constitution. It's a beautiful work of mastery, and to see my country and its people be taken advantage of makes my blood boil. I do have to admit, this video frustrated me to make because I had to revisit these topics that I was red-pilled on many moons ago, but the emotions resurfaced. I just want to do good for people, my family, and my country. I'm a patriot to the core. I strongly admire American exceptionalism, and we need to see changes in our beautiful country. I'm sick of seeing all the hate for my country, from its own citizens as well. Our country itself at the core is not the problem. It's the evil powers to be who are taking advantage of us and all that we have built. And I've had enough. Thanks for watching, everyone. This topic is heavy, but it's important. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Let me know what other topics you want to see covered as well. And with all of that said, I love you all. Stay true to yourselves, as I always say. Until next time, Jimmy Talks out.